My name is Riley Bailey. I am 30 years old. I never imagined my own family would corner me like that, twisting years of quiet resentment into a single suffocating demand that left me feeling utterly erased and disposable. Their cold agreement to force me out of my life just to serve theirs hit like a gut punch, shattering any illusion of loyalty I still clung to. It happened at our annual family barbecue in the backyard of my parents' house in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The air thick with the smell of grilling burgers and distant laughter from neighbors. But inside our circle, tension crackled like a storm about to break. My mother, Christine Bailey, whom I'd always seen as the quiet enforcer behind every family decision, leaned forward in her lawn chair, her eyes narrowing as she fixed them on me and said in that sharp, unyielding tone she reserved for when she wanted no arguments, "Riley, it's time you stopped pretending your little job matters more than us. We've decided you're moving back home to take care of things here starting next month. No more excuses about your so-called independence." My father, Roger Bailey, just nodded silently beside her, his arms crossed, offering no defense or even a glance of regret, as if my entire life was just an inconvenience they could vote out of existence. The pain sliced through me, hot and immediate. Realizing this wasn't a suggestion, but a coordinated ambush, their united front, making it clear they'd planned this without me gaslighting me into believing my choices had always been selfish. I sat there for a moment, my hands trembling on my lap, then quietly stood up, grabbed my keys from the picnic table and walked toward my car without a word, knowing this was the spark that would ignite everything they'd buried for years. But as I drove away, I whispered to myself a vow that hinted at the unraveling to come. They'd soon learn that erasing me meant losing more than they ever bargained for. Have you ever felt your family treat you like an outsider in your own life, pushing you to sacrifice everything just to fit their mold? What would you do if they cornered you like that? Give in or fight back in ways they never saw coming? I'd love to hear in the comments below. That barbecue wasn't the first sign of trouble, but it was the one that finally made me see the pattern clearly, like puzzle pieces snapping into place after too many years of ignoring the edges. Growing up in Milwaukee, our family looked picture perfect from the outside, a cozy 2-story home in a quiet suburb, weekend outings to Lake Michigan, and holidays filled with traditions that everyone envied. My parents ran a small accounting firm downtown, nothing flashy but steady enough to keep us comfortable, and they prided themselves on being the pillars of stability, always emphasizing how family came first, no matter what. But underneath that facade, there was this undercurrent of control, where my dreams always seemed to take a back seat to their expectations, and any pushback from me was met with guilt trips that left me questioning if I was the problem. I remember as a kid, I'd spend hours in my room sketching designs for clothes, dreaming of becoming a fashion stylist. But whenever I shared that, my mother would smile tightly and say things like, "That's cute, but real security comes from practical choices like helping with the business someday." My father would chime in with his practical nods, reinforcing that my role was to support the family unit, not chase whims that might disrupt it. As I got older, that pressure only grew, weaving itself into every major decision I made, from choosing college majors to picking jobs that allowed me flexibility to be there for them whenever they called. After high school, I enrolled in a local community college for business administration, mostly because my parents insisted it was the smart path, even though my heart pulled me toward creative fields. During those years, I worked part-time at their firm, filing papers and answering phones, and while it paid the bills, it felt like a slow drain on my spirit each day, reminding me that my own ambitions were secondary. But I pushed through, graduating and landing a job as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized apparel company in the city, where I finally got to blend my love for design with real campaigns. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. And for the first time, I felt like I was building something independent, away from the family's constant pull. Yet even then, The calls started coming more frequently, my mother asking me to cover shifts at their firm when someone was out, or my father guilting me into canceling plans to help with family errands, always framing it as my duty since I was the reliable one. Susie. What I didn't realize back then was how deeply their resentment had taken root, especially after I started succeeding a bit on my own terms, like when I got promoted last year and began traveling for work conferences. They'd make snide comments during dinners, my mother saying things like, "Must be nice to jet off while we're here holding everything together," and my father agreeing with a grunt as if my progress was a betrayal rather than something to celebrate. It built up gradually, those small jabs eroding my confidence until that barbecue turned it into something undeniable. Driving away that day, my mind raced with memories of all the times I'd bent over backward for them, only to be met with more demands, and I knew I couldn't just let this slide like before. A few days after the barbecue, I tried to brush it off as a heated moment, telling myself families argue and move on. But the texts started pouring in, each one ramping up the pressure in ways that made my stomach twist. My mother sent the first one that evening. "We weren't kidding, Riley. Your father and I have talked, and it's non-negotiable. You need to quit that job and move back. We're not getting any younger, and someone has to step up." I stared at my phone in my apartment, the words blurring as anger mixed with hurt. Realizing this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing, but something they'd orchestrated probably over multiple conversations, where they dissected my life without me there. Then came my father's follow-up. Shorter, but just as cutting. "Think about what's important. Family first. Always." No apology, no room for discussion, just this assumption that I'd fold like I always had, sacrificing my career and independence to become their live-in caretaker, as if my own path was disposable. I didn't respond right away, needing time to process. So I called my close friend Jenna, who'd known my family dynamics since college and always had a way of cutting through the fog with her straightforward advice. Jenna worked as a therapist in the city and over coffee. The next morning at our favorite spot downtown, she listened as I spilled everything, her expression shifting from concern to outrage. "Riley, this isn't love, it's control," she said firmly, stirring her latte with a spoon that clinked against the cup like "en stalkan!" exclamation point. "They've been gaslighting you for years, making you feel guilty for living your life, and now they're escalating because you're pulling away. You don't owe them your future." Her words hit hard, validating what I'd felt but never named. And by the end of our talk, I felt a spark of resolve, though the fear of confrontation lingered like a shadow. But the pressure didn't stop. If anything, it intensified with my family, looping in my brother Kyle Bailey, whom they'd always treated as the golden boy who could do no wrong, living rent-free in their basement while pursuing his music career that never quite took off. My brother called me that afternoon, his voice dripping with sarcasm as he echoed our parents' line, "Come on, sis, don't be selfish. Mom and dad need help, and you're the one with the stable job. I can't just drop everything." It was a low blow, knowing he'd never been held to the same standards, always excused for his aimless drifting while I was expected to carry the load, and hearing him pile on made the betrayal feel even more coordinated, like the whole family had aligned against me. I hung up feeling isolated, but that call was the push I needed to start researching my options quietly, looking into boundaries, and even legal advice on family obligations, though I wasn't ready to go that far yet. The next weekend, things escalated further when I showed up for what I thought was a casual Sunday dinner, hoping to talk it out calmly, but walking into the kitchen, I found my parents and my brother waiting like an intervention panel, papers spread out on the table that looked suspiciously like a lease agreement for my apartment. My mother spoke first, her tone laced with that familiar mix of disappointment and authority. "We've drafted this to make it easy sign here to break your lease, and we'll help with the move. It's for the best, Riley, before you regret putting yourself first." My father added his jab, "We've sacrificed for you, now it's your turn," while my brother smirked in the corner, chiming in with, "Yeah, don't make this harder than it needs to be." The room felt smaller, their words pressing in like walls closing, and in that moment, the cumulative weight of years of emotional coercion hit me. The guilt trips, the dismissals, The way they'd always made me feel like my worth was tied to how much I gave up for them. I didn't sign, of course. Instead, I pushed the papers back across the table with a steady hand, my voice quieter than I felt inside, but firm enough to surprise even me. No, I'm not doing this. My life isn't yours to rearrange. Their reactions were immediate and cutting. My mother gasped, as if I'd slapped her, snapping. After everything we've done, this is how you repay us, ungrateful, just like always. My father shook his head, muttering about how I'd regret burning bridges, while my brother laughed bitterly, saying, "Good luck on your own. You'll come crawling back when it falls apart." Walking out that door, my heart pounding, I knew this was just the beginning of the fallout. But for the first time, the fear was mixed with a strange sense of freedom, hinting at the irreversible choices ahead. Over the following weeks, the small violations kept piling up, each one chipping away at my resolve, but also fueling my growing rebellion like fuel on a slow-burning fire. My mother started calling my boss at work, pretending to be concerned about my family emergencies, and suggesting I might need time off, which led to an awkward meeting where my supervisor pulled me aside, asking if everything was okay at home. It was humiliating sitting there, explaining without explaining, feeling the professional life I'd built start to crack under their interference. And when I confronted her over the phone, she gaslighted me with, "I'm just looking out for you. If you were here where you belong, this wouldn't be an issue." Then my father froze the joint savings account we'd set up years ago for emergencies, claiming it was to protect me from making rash decisions, effectively cutting off access to a few $1,000s I'd contributed. All while my brother posted subtle digs on social media about family traitors that our extended relatives liked and commented on. Amid the chaos, I leaned on Jenna more, and she introduced me to her colleague Marcus, a family law consultant who specialized in boundary-setting cases, and over a consultation in his modest office, he laid out options I hadn't considered, like documenting their harassment for potential restraining orders if it escalated. Marcus was straightforward with a no-nonsense demeanor that cut through my doubts. "This isn't normal, Riley. They're using coercion to control you, and you have rights. Start by sending a formal letter outlining your boundaries." His advice gave me tools, but it also amplified the stakes, knowing that going legal could sever ties forever. Meanwhile, the family's tactics shifted to emotional blackmail, with my mother leaving voicemails about her health scares that turned out to be exaggerated, guilting me into second-guessing my stance, each one a mini cliffhanger that left me anxious about what they'd pull next. One evening, after a particularly draining day at work where a client presentation bombed because I was distracted, I sat down with Jenna and Marcus at a quiet cafe, hashing out a plan that felt both empowering and terrifying, the kind of decision that could change everything in an instant. As we sipped our coffees that evening, Jenna and Marcus laid out the steps with a precision that made the whole thing feel less like a wild idea and more like a necessary strategy, their voices low against the hum of the cafe. Marcus pulled out a notepad, sketching a timeline for sending a cease and desist letter to my parents, emphasizing how it would document their interference without jumping straight to court, while Jenna nodded along, reminding me that this was about reclaiming my space, not revenge. The plan started simple. I'd draft the letter with Marcus's help, outlining specific instances of their overreach, like the calls to my boss and freezing the account, and demand they stop all contact about my living situation or job. We spent the next hour refining it, Marcus suggesting phrases that were firm but professional, like, "Any further attempts to influence my employment will be considered harassment," which sent a chill through me as I imagined their reactions. Jenna added her touch, insisting I include how their actions had already impacted my health, mentioning the stress-induced migraines I'd been getting to make it personal and undeniable. By the time we wrapped up, I felt armed, but the weight of what came next hung heavy. Actually sending it meant crossing a line I couldn't uncross, potentially fracturing the family beyond repair. The following morning, I woke to a barrage of missed calls from my mother, her voicemails escalating from concerned to accusatory, starting with, "Riley, we need to talk about your attitude," and building to, "If you keep ignoring us, you'll force our hand, don't make me involve the rest of the family." It was classic. Her using the threat of wider shame to pull me back in, and when I didn't pick up, she followed through by texting our extended relatives, including my cousin, Lisa Bailey, who I'd always been close to, but who now messaged me confused, asking why my parents were saying I was abandoning them in their time of need. Lisa worked as a teacher in the suburbs and had her own family stresses, so her involvement stung, making me feel like the isolation was spreading, turning private coercion into public judgment. I pushed forward anyway, meeting Marcus at his office that afternoon to finalize the letter, his calm demeanor an anchor, as we printed it on official letterhead. "This is your power move," he said, handing me the envelope, "but be prepared they might lash out before backing down." He was right. The day after I mailed it, certified, my father showed up at my apartment unannounced, banging on the door until I let him in, his face red as he waved a copy he'd somehow intercepted or received early. "What is this garbage?" he demanded, tossing it on my coffee table like it offended him. "You're treating us like criminals for wanting what's best. Your mother is devastated, crying all night because her own daughter sees her as a threat." His words were laced with that psychological jab, flipping the script to make me the villain. And when I tried to explain calmly that I just needed boundaries, he cut me off with, "Boundaries. That's code for selfishness. We've given you everything, and this is how you spit in our faces." The confrontation dragged on for an hour, him alternating between guilt and anger, even bringing up old favors like paying for my college tuition, as if they were debts I still owed, while I stood my ground repeating that my life wasn't theirs to command. He left storming out, slamming the door with a final shot. "You'll regret this when you're alone," and we're gone. That night, the fallout rippled further. My brother posted a vague family photo on social media with a caption about loyalty over everything. Got lies from relatives amplifying the sense of exile and making me question if I was overreacting. But Jenna checked in with a call, her voice steady. "This is them testing you. Hold the line or it'll never stop." As the days turned into a tense standoff, the pressure morphed into subtler tactics that chipped away at my daily life, each one a calculated move to wear me down without direct confrontation. My mother started forwarding emails from their accountant about family finances, hinting that they'd cut me out of any future support if I didn't comply, including a small inheritance from my late grandmother that they'd always dangled as a safety net. It was a low blow knowing money had never been my motivator. But seeing the numbers in black and white, $50,000 potentially gone, made the stakes feel brutally real, tying my autonomy to their control in ways that left me sleepless. Then my brother escalated by showing up at my work during lunch, pretending it was a surprise visit, but cornering me in the break room to whisper, "Mom's talking about changing the will. You sure you want to play this game?" His smirk was infuriating, a reminder of how he'd always been shielded from responsibility while I bore the brunt. I confided in my cousin Lisa over the phone that evening, hoping for an ally. But she hesitated, saying, "They're just worried about getting older, maybe compromise a little." Her words felt like another layer of isolation, as if the family's narrative had poisoned even the neutral ground, pushing me further into a corner where doubt crept in. What if I was the one destroying everything Marcus advised? Documenting it all? So I started a journal of every interaction entries piling up with dates and details that painted a clear picture of their campaign, from the financial threats to the social shunning at a cousin's birthday party where relatives gave me side-eye and whispered, The breaking point came 2 weeks later during what was supposed to be a neutral family mediation I'd suggested through Jenna's recommendation, held at a community center downtown with a neutral facilitator named Elena Foster. Ironic, given her name matched someone from my past stories, but she was sharp and impartial, guiding us through the session. My parents arrived with my brother in tow, their faces set in that united front. And right from the start, my mother took the lead, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "We're here because Riley thinks we're monsters for asking her to contribute. Fine, let's air it out. You've always been the dramatic one turning family duty into oppression." My father piled on, "We raised you better than this lawsuit nonsense," twisting the letter into something aggressive while my brother added his jab, "Yeah, sis, acting like we're the bad guys when you're the one bailing." The facilitator tried to steer it back, but the jabs kept coming, my mother interrupting my attempts to speak with, "See, always deflecting, admit you're just too busy chasing promotions to care." It was a barrage, their words designed to dismantle me piece by piece, exposing hypocrisies like how they'd supported my brother's endless projects, but criticized my career as frivolous. I finally snapped standing up mid-session with a calm that surprised me. "This isn't mediation. It's an ambush. I'm done letting you define my worth." Walking out the facilitator following to check on me, I felt the weight of irreversible loss settling in, knowing this might be the last time we sat in the same room. But the alternative, surrendering my life, was no longer an option. Back home, the silence from them was deafening at first, but then the retaliation hit in waves, starting with a formal email from their lawyer demanding I repay loans from years ago that I'd thought were gifts amounting to $20,000. The email from their lawyer landed in my inbox. Like a timed bomb, the subject line reading "Notice of Outstanding Debts." And as I read through the legalese demanding repayment of $20,000 within 30 days or face collection actions, my hands shook with a mix of fury and disbelief. It was the ultimate escalation, turning their emotional coercion into a financial trap. And I forwarded it straight to Marcus, who replied within the hour, "This is retaliation weak on legal grounds, since those were gifts, but we'll counter with our own demand letter. Es indemnitas artar intistamortation." We moved quickly after that, Marcus drafting a response that refuted their claims point by point, attaching old emails and bank statements I'd dug up proving the money was unconditional, and we sent it off with a warning that further harassment could lead to a countersuit for emotional distress. Jenna was there when I hit send, sitting on my couch with takeout Chinese, her presence a steady reminder that I wasn't fighting alone. And she said with that wry smile, "They're bluffing because you've called their hand watch how fast they fold when it costs them real money." But the waiting game that followed was agonizing, each day a mini cliffhanger as I checked my email obsessively, half expecting a process server at my door, or worse, a family-wide smear campaign that could tank my reputation at work. The confrontation peaked a week later when my mother called a family meeting at their house, framing it as a chance to clear the air. But I knew better and brought Marcus along as a neutral witness. His professional calm a shield against their tactics. We arrived to find not just my parents and my brother, but also my Aunt Deborah Bailey, who'd flown in from Chicago. She was my father's sister, always the self-appointed family mediator with her no-nonsense accountant vibe. But I could tell from her tight expression that they'd looped her in to pile on. My mother opened fire right away, her voice sharp as a knife. "You've gone too far with this lawyer nonsense, Riley, dragging outsiders into family business. We gave you that money out of love, and now you're twisting it into debt to spite us." My father nodded vigorously, adding his cut. "It's disrespectful. We thought we raised you with better values than suing your own blood." My brother jumped in next, his tone mocking as he leaned back in his chair. "Yeah, and now Aunt Deborah's here to see how you're tearing us apart over nothing happy now." My aunt chimed in, more measured, but still stinging. "I've looked at the finances, Riley. Technically, it could be seen as loans and fighting. This will just drain everyone. Why not compromise and help out at home instead?" It was a coordinated assault, their words weaving guilt with threats, exposing how deeply they'd entrenched their control, turning even extended family into allies against my independence. I felt the room spin for a moment, the weight of their united front pressing down. But Marcus interjected smoothly. Actually, the documentation shows otherwise. Let's review it together. Shall we? He pulled out copies, laying them on the table like evidence in a trial, forcing them to confront the facts. The meeting devolved from there, my mother snapping back with, "This isn't a courtroom, it's our home, and you're treating us like enemies," while my father muttered about cutting me off, completely including from family events. My brother's final jab was the cruelest, "Go ahead, play the victim, but don't come crying when you're all alone with your boundaries." My aunt tried to de-escalate, suggesting a family therapist, but I saw through it as another way to drag me back into their web. I stood up, then my voice steady. Despite the storm inside, I'm not compromising on my life anymore. The letter stands, and if you push this, it'll go to court. Walking out with Marcus, I heard my mother's parting shot echo behind me. "You'll regret burning these bridges when you need us." In the days that followed, the legal back and forth intensified, their lawyer firing off another demand that upped the ante by threatening to involve my workplace if I didn't pay up, but Marcus countered brilliantly, filing a formal complaint with the Bar Association about unethical conduct and sending a cease and desist that included evidence of their harassment. Jenna helped me navigate the emotional toll, introducing me to a support group for adult children of controlling parents, where I met others like Sarah, a nurse in her 30s who'd cut ties after similar demands, and her stories mirrored mine so closely it was eerie, giving me the strength to hold firm. Sarah became a quick confidant, texting me encouragements like, "Remember, their threats are smoke. You've got the facts on your side." The turning point came when their bluff collapsed after a tense mediation session ordered by the court, where my aunt surprisingly admitted the loans were never formalized. Cracking under Marcus's questioning, my parents backed down, agreeing to drop the claim in exchange for no countersuit. It was a partial win. I kept the money and my independence, but the cost was steep as they followed through on their threats by excluding me from family gatherings with my brother, spreading rumors that painted me as the heartless one. And even my cousin Lisa distancing herself, saying it was too complicated to stay in touch. My aunt reached out once, apologetic but firm. "I tried to help, but you've changed everything. Maybe time will heal it." In the aftermath, I threw myself into work, earning another promotion that let me travel more, but the victory felt hollow at times, shadowed by the irreversible loss of what little family bond remained. Jenna and Sarah filled some of that void, our weekly meetups, a new kind of support network, and Marcus even became a casual friend, checking in occasionally with legal updates. I changed my locks, blocked their numbers, and started therapy on my own, unpacking years of guilt that had kept me tethered. One night, scrolling through old photos, I deleted the ones from that fateful barbecue, whispering to myself, "This is the price of freedom, and it's worth it." Yet, the scars lingered. Holidays came and went in solitude, and whispers from mutual acquaintances reminded me of the isolation I'd chosen. I won my autonomy, but lost the illusion of family forever, a bittersweet trade that taught me self-preservation sometimes means walking away empty-handed but whole. Thank you for listening to my story. It's still raw to share, but putting it out there helps. Have you ever had to choose between your family's expectations and your own peace, knowing you'd lose something irreplaceable? Either way, share in the comments if this resonates. I'd love to hear how you navigated it.